How's it going, you all?
And welcome back to B-Bros.
Today on B-Bros, we are exploring one of our greatest interests, PlayStation and Spider-Man. Our absolute favorite game on PS4, Marvel's Spider-Man has it all. An open world to explore, incredible resolution, amazing combat abilities, and spectacular stories and characters.
So, without further ado, let's dive into the video and see why Marvel's Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man.
One of the biggest advantages of the Spider-Man compared to the others is when the story takes place. Peter is 23 years old, which means he has been Spider-Man for 8 years already. This means we are past the years that we have already seen a million times in the movies, like Ben Parker's death, getting bullied by Flash, or fighting underground before understanding his responsibilities.
Everyone knows the origin story of Spider-Man, and we don't have to see the same moments over and over again in a time-consuming fashion. PS4 Spider-Man doesn't lose any time rambling on with Peter's backstory, but allows us to explore it whilst playing the game.
At 23, Peter has gained a lot of experience and skill. He's an established character in the story already. This allows us to meet the side characters and the antagonists of the story much better. Also, the fact that Peter has already gone through many phases doesn't take away from his growth. He still has many challenges to face, both as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, with personal relations and new enemies emerging.
Change takes place as time goes by. We are not living in the same world as the time the superheroes were created for the first time. For example, Superman was created during the Second World War to bring hope into the people in a time of great despair. Captain America was used as a tool to get support for the war effort, which is shown greatly in the movie The First Avenger. As we have passed those times and challenges, these characters have to be adapted to the time we are living today. This is true for Spider-Man as well.
The stories, character appearances, relationships, etc. should be adapted as well. Marvel's Spider-Man does a perfect job adapting and also not losing the comic book origins of the characters. One of the easiest ways to see this change is the costume changes of the characters. Every character's appearance is modernized very well. Here are a few characters with the origins and their modernized versions.
The appearance changes are easy to spot with a glance, but the motivations and drives of the characters are also modernized accordingly. One of the best examples of that is Mary Jane's character.
The Mary Jane we saw before was more of a supporting character to Peter than her own individual self. She caused more problems than helping Peter in Sam Raimi's version. In the animated series, she was a big support to Peter but was mostly a static character. In PS4, she's an independent woman who can get by on her own. She works at the Bugle and is an extremely smart person that can solve everything. She is the ultimate Mary Jane that we have never seen before.
Marvel's Spider-Man has the most complete story we have ever seen. We mentioned that this story takes place 8 years after Peter became Spider-Man. So the formation of Sinister Six, the arrest of Kingpin, the relationship between Spider-Man and Black Cat already took place. These stories we have never seen on camera except for the Spider-Man animated series.
Every story after that has been interrupted in one way or another, which prevented these stories of being told. For example, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was cut off before we were introduced to Vulture, Felicia Hardy, and Mysterio, which was the original plan for Spider-Man 4. The Amazing Spider-Man was on the verge of presenting their own Sinister Six, but was never given a trilogy. And now, MCU Spider-Man struggles to use the original Spider-Man villains because of their deal with Sony. For example, we might not see Venom, Carnage, Morbius, Kraven, and potentially more characters in the MCU if a deal cannot be made.
PS4 Spider-Man already created these characters and stories that we know and uses them in this story. They are integrated very well into it, and their previous encounters with Spider-Man are told briefly that we don't feel like we are missing out on the story.
In addition to the Sinister Six, Kingpin, and Black Cat, we get to meet the new characters like Mr. Negative and Dr. Octopus. They are the main villains of the story, and we spend an enormous time untangling their stories. This makes facing them as bosses in the game all the more convincing.
The side stories are also very important and adds to the main story. The most important story next to the main story is Peter's relationship with Mary Jane. They have also gone through a lot in the past 8 years, and we see their relationship at a moment we have never seen before. The fact that they are broken up makes things difficult, but we can see that they are patching things up as they are solving crimes together.
There are a bunch of more stories like the introduction of Miles Morales, stopping Tombstone, catching the Black Cat, and later on in the DLC preventing Hammerhead and the Maggia from destroying New York.
Everything we have mentioned so far wouldn't have mattered without the most important thing, Peter Parker. Peter Parker is arguably the superhero who people can relate the most. The challenges he faces as a teenager and later on as an adult are very human. Therefore, you need to ace his personality to create a relatable character.
The ultimate Peter Parker is nice, kind, caring, respectful, funny, enthusiastic, and sarcastic, humble, and most importantly responsible. He has a moral code higher than everyone, which creates a gap between him and the people around him. From time and time again, we can see all these qualities of Peter while playing the game. Peter is also an incredibly smart person. His fast thinking ability gets him out of tight positions, and the scientist in him solves many issues. Finally, Peter as Spider-Man has to be on top of his game. His skills, agility, power, and speed is top notch, and he clearly is the strongest character in the entire game as a whole package.
We should mention as a side note that his voice actor Yuri Lowenthal has a voice that suits Peter perfectly. The voice casting director did a great job as a whole to find a voice that fits every character very well.
The last thing to add about Spider-Man is the new costume design. The White Spider is a very creative and a unique costume choice. We wouldn't have dreamed about how good it would have looked without seeing the design. We think it goes to show how much effort they have put into the character just by the appearance.
Marvel's Spider-Man created a Spider-Man role that we didn't know we needed. We were extremely happy with the MCU Spider-Man's development, but this seems to have more potential as an ongoing story. Thankfully, we are not the only people who love the game, as it is one of the most popular games on PlayStation, and they continued the storyline with the Miles Morales game.
Both Spider-Mans are occupying the same universe and their story is far from over. If you have played both games, you can see that in the end credit scenes of them, Norman Osborn is trying to save his son Harry from a family disease. Dr. Kurt Connors is conducting the experiments to cure Harry, and if you look closely to Harry's capsule, a symbiote-like creature is floating inside a fluid. The sequel to Marvel's Spider-Man is as promising, if not more, than the original game. Spider-Man 2 is rumored to be in development, but we definitely don't have a release date.
We will have more videos about it, as we are extremely excited for the future of Marvel's Spider-Man.
In the meantime, we would suggest you to familiarize yourself with both Spider-Man and Miles Morales' story if you haven't already, and read the Marvel Spider-Man comics if you would like to gain more insight about the characters and their backstories. We should also mention that Miles Morales' game is not valid for money compared to Marvel's Spider-Man, as the story isn't as quality nor long.
This is all from us this week. See you all next week.
Me Rose out.